Hello, welcome back to my channel. What if legend? What if Naruto had unique dojutsu part 1? The like goal for this video is 15. The sooner the like goal is completed, the sooner I will upload the next part for this what if. Disclaimer: I don't own Naruto nor this fanfic. Night had fallen on the village of Konoha. It was an oddly cold night, but most of its citizens paid little mind to it. They had the comfort of a warm home to ward off the chilly night. As they went to sleep in their warm, soft beds, they did not know that tonight would be a special one. On this night, a man wishing to bring the greedy ambitions of his village to reality would unknowingly cause the destinies of two children to come crashing together and change the world. Konoha, Ali's the man landed in the alleyway. He allowed himself a small reprieve. It would take his pursuers a minute or two to track him. Long enough for him to figure out his next course of action. His mission had hit something of a snag. Damn that Hyuga! The man cursed to himself. If it hadn't been for him, I would not have to worry about the whole village coming after my ass. The Kumonin had been entrusted with a special task. While the others negotiated a peace treaty with Konoha, he would kidnap the heiress of the Hyuga clan. She would be used to create a new clan of Byakugan users, loyal only to Kumo. If all had gone to plan, his village would have a peace treaty with Konoha and a powerful new Kekkai Genkai to add to their arsenal. Konoha wouldn't suspect them, or if they did, then they would not be able to prove it. Unfortunately, he forgot one of the first things they drilled into him at the academy. No plan ever goes smoothly. In this case, he had the misfortune of being spotted by the girl's uncle. A bit of quick thinking had saved him from death. Flash tags, they were truly an underappreciated tool of a ninja. He felt his query struggle in the bag over his back. "Please let me go," came the child's terrified voice. "Shut it, Brett," the ninja barked, jostling the bag. "It's your fault that I'm in this situation." He needed to think, and the spoiled princess's frantic pleas were distracting him. That flash tag would buy him a few moments. After that, the whole village would be crawling with ninja out for him in a minute or two. If he could make it past the village's walls and escape into the forest, then he could have a chance of completing the mission. That's assuming their Anbu didn't pick up his trail. If that happened, then No, he shook his head, warding off the morbid thoughts. He needed to focus on what he was going to do next, then when he was in a safe place, could he decide on what to do for any future complications. Perhaps if he could get into the sewer system, he might. Any farther thoughts came to a screeching halt as he felt a weight crash into him. He had forgotten another important rule of the shinobi: always be aware of your surroundings. He fell on his back, the bag sent flying with a yelp of surprise. Before his mind had enough time to process the series of events, he felt that weight land on him and soon felt small fists hit him. "Let her go, you big meanie," came a high-pitched voice. More than a bit confused, the Kumonin's vision honed in on the perpetrator. It was a child, a boy, 4 years, maybe 5. It was a little hard to tell because of how small he was. He had sun-kissed blonde hair that spiked in odd directions and blue eyes that were almost like an ocean to themselves. But the most distinguishing feature he had were the 3 whisker-like birthmarks on either of his cheeks. It took the ninja full 3 seconds for his mind to process the image before him and another 2 for it to accept it. Then anger flashed over him. A child had got the drop on him, and by the looks of the brat's ragged and ill-fitting clothes, he was a street rat of some kind and most likely an orphan. The humiliation he felt could not be described in words. A street rat orphan had gotten the better of him. If it had been anyone else in any other situation, he might have laughed it up before slitting the boy's throat. Instead, he let his anger take its course and lashed his arm out, striking the boy in the side and sending him flying away. "You damn rat!" he shouted at the boy. With the brat off him, the Kumonin jumped back to his feet in time to see the boy charge at him. This time he was prepared for the child's assault and shot out his leg, landing a hit in the brat's stomach. The boy was sent flying into a nearby wall with a thunk. The boy tried to get up. "Durable little bastard, aren't you?" the nin thought to himself. In the time it took to blink, the man was right on top of the boy. Grabbing him by his blonde hair, he smashed the child's head into the wall. The boy yelped in pain. Having regained control of the situation, the man allowed his anger to ebb, but only slightly. "You little brat," he growled at the soon-to-be dead child. "Do you have any idea who you're messing with?" He tightens his grip on the boy's hair, causing him to squirm from the discomfort. "Don't care," the boy said through gritted teeth. "Someone was in danger, and I had to help." "You help? Ha, all you did was piss me off and put yourself in danger," the Kumonin said, reaching for his kunai. "What kind of hero do you think you're supposed to be?" He pointed the blade weapon at the boy's throat. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and one day I'll be Hokage," the boy all but proclaimed. "If I can't save one person from a bastard like you, then I don't deserve it." The man had to suppress a chuckle at the boy's audacity. This little brat become Hokage. The day that happened was the day that Kami descended on the earth. Unlikely as one, this boy would be dead soon enough, and two, he was not a religious man. "We'll see about that," he said, ready to plunge his weapon into the boy's eye socket. Then something stayed his hand. He had looked into the boy's sapphire eyes. Eyes that were full of defiance and determination, full of life. It rubbed him the wrong way. "Kid, I don't like the way your eyes look at me," he growled into the boy's ears as an idea formed in his mind. A streak of sadism that he knew better to indulge in, but at the moment, he didn't care. He had bruised ego to nurse. "Tell you what, Brett. I won't kill you." He held his kunai to the boy's cheek and applied enough pressure to draw a prickle of blood. "In exchange, I'll teach you a lesson in respecting your betters." He moves the small bladed weapon to the eyes. "And I think I'll start with those disrespectful eyes of yours." Then with a twisted laugh, he dug the tip of the kunai into the corner of the boy's eyes, inciting a pained scream from the young child. The sound was a catharsis for the stressed shinobi, one that he would enjoy for the next minute and a half as he continued to gouge out the boy's eyes. He lowered his kunai to admire his handiwork. Once there were deep blue eyes that could have put the sky to shame, there were now two bloody and empty sockets. The eyeballs now laid on the ground, with a swift motion, he stomped on them, ending any hope for them to be reattached to their owner. The boy was panting heavily and looked to be on the verge of the unconscious. "Now, do you understand, boy?" he said, his voice calmer than it was before. "You could never beat me. Think about that as you bleed out here." He was about to drop the child when he heard him mumble something. What was that breath? More mumbling, this time a bit louder. Speak clearly, boy. Note a broken bar beat. The child forced out. Just hey broken bar keep hey broken bar boo busy. Then he went limp. In the few seconds he had consciousness, the Kumonin realized a third rule he had forgotten. Distraction skilled. He felt a jab in the back of his neck, and darkness claimed him. Hayashi silently watched as the Kumonin slept over and gently caught the prone body of one Uzumaki Naruto. Looking down at the young Jinchuriki, seeing the mutilation that had been inflicted on the child, the Hyuga clan head was for a moment tempted to kill the man. He certainly had the right on three accounts: first and foremost as a father, then as a shinobi of Konoha, and lastly as a friend to a dear old friend. Minato and Kushina, if you're seeing this, please forgive us. He let his rational side win out. They needed to know the full details of Kumo's plans here. Hayashi-sama, he heard a branch member say to him. Your daughter is safe. He tore his eyes away from the grizzle side and laid them on another side that broke his heart. The terrified and traumatized expression on his beloved little girl was a sight no parent should ever be forced to see. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, and she looked like any sudden noise would cause her to jump. She looks up to him, their eyes meeting. The mix of fear and hurt in her eyes was almost too much for him to bear. Atozan. Her trembling voice whispered out, almost like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Forcing himself to smile, he kneeled before his frightened daughter. It's all right, my precious Hinata, you're safe now. He said, keeping his voice calm and even. That seemed to do it for her as she latched onto him and began to cry into his shoulder. I was her broken bar. So broken bar scared. She sobbed, her words almost incoherent. A dozen I wa broken bar as sleeping in my room when a broken bar I woke and a bad man was standing over me. ITRT tried to scream for he broken bar LP, but he put in that bag. And then a broken bar that boy got hurt because of me. It's all my fault. Hayashi laid his hand on the back of his daughter's head to calm her down. She did see what happened. Hinata, forgive me, I failed you as a father. I will see to it that this man pays with his life. He put his thoughts of vengeance aside for a moment. It's all right, my daughter. That bad man can't hurt you anymore, nor anyone else. He said in a soothing voice. But that boy, she tried to say. Her father placed a finger to her lips, giving her a reassuring smile. Do not fear. I will see to it that he is cared for properly. He said, even if I have to force the hospital to treat him with threats of retribution as clan head. A dark voice whispered in the back of his mind. Memories of how the village treated the boy flooded to the forefront. Minato, if you had foreseen how the village would treat your son, would you have given your life to save it? He looked back at the unconscious form of the young Jinchuriki. A second branch member that had accompanied him was tending to the boy. Beyond the grievous injuries around his eyes, other details concerned him. His clothes were dirty and tattered, and looked to have a better place in the trash. Beneath them, he could see his malnourished form, and for some time if he wasn't mistaken. How long has he been like this? Have the caretakers at the orphanage neglected him or even abused him? Or perhaps have they simply thrown him out to the streets? he would have to inform Hokage-sama of this. But first, he lifted his daughter and stood up and turned his attention to the first cadet branch. You, take this, he pointed to the Kumonin man to Ti and inform them that they are to break him using whatever methods they deem necessary. Somewhere a certain snake mistress and a scared man smiled, causing others to fear for their lives. Yes, Hayashi-sama, the branch member said, bowing. He picked up the unconscious shinobi, and both disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Hayashi then turned to face the other that came with him. How is the boy? He asked. The branch member did not take her eyes off the boy. At the moment, he is stable, but for how long, I do not know. She said. I would recommend that he be taken to the hospital to make sure he stays that way. Hayashi nods at the woman's recommendation. I will see to that personally, he said. And much more. He silently added. It was high time that he did something about the son of his best friend, the Sandame's orders be damned. I want you to take my daughter back to the clan compound and report to the elders. After that, inform the Sandame of what's happened here. He ordered the branch member. The woman rose and bowed to him, saying, Yes, Hayashi-sama, I will. She was cut off by the sound of Hinata's voice. No. The Hyuga clan head stared at his daughter, surprised at the volume of her voice. PL please let me come with you. He was about to say no to her request when his eyes met hers. He almost found himself gasping at seeing the determination he never witnessed in his soft-spoken daughter. Recollecting his thoughts, he concluded that the girl would not take no as an answer. Truly she was her mother. He nods to the girl giving up on the argument before it could begin. Very well, he said, turning his attention back to the branch member. In that case, return to the compound and inform the elders that Hinata has been found and is safe with me. Then report to the Sandame. Again, the branch member bowed to the clan head. Yes, Hayashi-sama. I bid you farewell and wish a speedy recovery for the boy. We owe him a debt this night, she said before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. That we do, he said to no one in particular. And much more. He moved to the prone form of Naruto, and carefully he moved his daughter to one arm where she wrapped her arms around his neck. He picked the boy up, taking care not to aggravate his wounds. Come, daughter, we have a busy night ahead of us. Then all three figures vanished in a swirl of leaves. An hour later, Konoha Hospital. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandame Hokage of Konohagakure, renowned as the professor and feared throughout the elemental nations as the Shinobi no Kami, was for lack of a better word, furious. No scratch that he was murderously livid, such that killing intent was rolling off him in waves. The only reason everyone within 10 feet of him wasn't in a fear-induced coma was that he was actively keeping it from spilling over and lashing at the nearest living thing. That, however, did not stop people from going pale as a ghost at the sight of the dark horse surrounding the old Shinobi. He was willing to tolerate many things and, in hindsight, should have come down on the insubordination of his former teammate Danzo, Kakashi's perpetual tardiness, even the nonsensical rantings of the civilian council. But this was a step too far for him. The attempted kidnapping of one of his citizens and the maiming of another, the latter of which he considers to be his surrogate grandson. He knew that he was well within his rights to send the severed heads of Kumo's so-called peace delegation with the torn-up remains of the treaty and a declaration of war to the wreckage. He stopped just before a door and took a deep breath to calm himself and contain his killing intent. No, it would not come to war against Kumo. He had seen enough war in his life. He would still see to it that Kumo paid dearly for its offense this night. Their delegation was currently detained at the hotel they were staying at. Under the watching eyes of a dozen Anbu squads, no one was to leave that building under the threat of being arrested and sent to TI. The kidnapper was at the moment enjoying the best hospitality that Ibiki and Anko had to offer. Konoha would soon enough have the information it needed to embarrass Kumo should it try to raise a stink over it. Plans of revenge well in place, and having brought the inferno of his anger to a low simmer, Hiruzen opened the door and entered the room where young Naruto was resting. The sight before him almost brought him to tears and reignited his anger tenfold. Sleeping peacefully, the blonde-haired boy lay on the hospital bed, the white bandages wrapped around his head, proof of the mutilation that had been inflicted. Seeing the young Hyuga heiress was what kept him from going over the edge. Reining in his emotions, the old Hokage gazed at the boy he thought of as family. He could only think of his failures. "Minato, my friend, I have failed you and your son yet again." It was at times like this he felt that he had become too old for this job. "Hokage-sama, it is good to see you." The voice of the Hyuga clan head tore him out of his thoughts. "Hi," he responded to the man. "It is good to see you as well, Hayashi-san. I only wish it were under better circumstances." He looked back at Naruto, not bothering to hide the sadness in his eyes. Next to his bedside passed out was Hinata Hyuga. "What is young Naruto's condition?" he asked. For a moment, Hayashi hesitates, worrying the old Hokage. "At present, he is in stable condition, Hokage-sama. The doctors are treating him well, though it did take some convincing on my end, so the lady at the reception would let us in." Hiruzen let out a tired sigh. Even 5 years later, many still held a grudge against the Uzumaki boy for what he contained, mostly the civilian population. He waved at the Hyuga clan head for him to continue. Aside from the injuries around his eyes, he sustained blows to his back, stomach, and the back of his head. Fortunately, none of them were serious and easily treated by the doctors or already healed due to his broken bar condition. Hayashi said, carefully skirting the law due to the presence of his daughter. The advanced healing granted by the Kyuubi, one of the few good things Naruto got out of his raw deal in life. However, Hayashi added in, causing the old Kage's apprehension to grow. While examining the boy, they found signs that he has been malnourished for several months now and evidence of physical abuse. Hiruzen felt his anger grow again, but he kept it hidden and only showed a sad expression. "While I have nothing else to go on, I believe that the caretakers have mistreated Naruto and have likely thrown him out of the orphanage." Making a mental to have a discussion with the caretakers of the orphanage, the Sandaime spoke. "I see. Thank you, Hayashi-san. I will look into this matter personally. But for now, my concern is with young Naruto right now. Is there anything else I should know about?" He knew he should have never asked that question. It usually proceeded with an answer that he didn't like. The ever so slight and brief change in the Hyuga's expression confirmed his fears. "Yes, Hokage-sama. While the doctors and the boy's regenerative abilities have healed all the injuries he has sustained, one was not and may prove to be a problem for his future. Hiruzen felt an odd chill going down his spine, one that he could not quite place. He glanced back at the Jinchuriki, wondering what could be beyond the Kyuubi's power to heal. He saw no sign of a permanent injury or one that could make the boy's life more difficult than it already was. Then something clicked in his mane and lump formed in his thought. The bandages around his head did cover his eyes? Right? Was the fox able to regenerate them? He looks back to the Hyaga head. Hayashi-san, please tell me that his eyes have, he began the question. His worst fears were confirmed when the man shook his head sadly. I'm afraid that seems to be beyond its power, he said, and Hiruzen could almost hear his heart break. Can't they implant new ones? Hiruzen asked, almost pleaded. The shake of Hayashi's head dashed that hope. The nerves that would normally connect his eyes to his brain were too heavily damaged for that procedure. That was it then. Naruto Uzumaki was blinded forever. If the council ever found out about this, they would use it as leverage to prevent the boy from signing up for the Shinobi forces, crushing his dreams of becoming Hokage before they could ever begin. No. I must not think like that. There has to be a way. The Hokage thought, steeling himself like he would before a battle in his prime. His old but still sharp mind raced with all the possible actions he could take to help his surrogate grandson. One slim but possible alternative came to mind, one of his wayward students. If we could get Tsunade back in the village, she might be able to help Naruto. He expressed his idea. He saw the Hyaga clan head rubbed his chin, mulling over the idea. She is considered to be the greatest Metacnan ever to live. He said, a statement that Hiruzen took with pride. But are you certain that she would be able to help the boy? After all, we are not just discussing healing scrape or even a broken bone but restoring the eyes of a person. Hiruzen knew that Hayashi had a point. Tsunade was lauded as a medical genius of unparalleled ability who practically reinvented the healing arts, but even this could be beyond her. But if anyone could do it, it would be her. It may be Naruto's only chance, Hiruzen spoke with full confidence. I'll get in contact with Jiraiya and see if he can't. Whatever else they had to plan would have to come later. One moment the atmosphere of the room was normal, a bit tense but nothing out of the ordinary, then the next, the two Shinobi felt a chakra spike. One that was all too familiar to them. Fear gripping his heart, the old Shinobi whirled to face the bed of Naruto. What he saw almost caused his heart to stop. Red malevolent chakra emanated from the boy. Only being a few feet away, he and Hayashi could feel the primal nature of the energy. Next to the bed, he saw Hinata wake up with a start and look on at Naruto with surprise and fear. From the corner of his eye, he saw Hayashi rush to his daughter and pick her up. Holding the girl protectively, he moved to the far side of the room. At this moment, the Sandaime Hokage had feared that the seal was on the verge of breaking. That he and the two Hyagas in the room would see firsthand the return of the monster that nearly destroyed the village 5 years ago before dying. This time there would be no way of stopping it. His fear quickly turned to confusion as he saw the dark chakra moved upwards and concentrated around the boy's head. In particular, the place where his eyes used to be. This lasted for several seconds before the chakra dissipated, and the room was calm. Hiruzen did not let his guard down. "What was that?" he heard Hayashi say in a barely audible tone. "I think we're about to get an answer," he said, seeing Naruto stir in his bed. He saw the boy look around the room, or at least try to. The confusion on the child's face as he turned his head from side to side in a vain attempt to see the room over was enough to bring the old Hokage out of his pensive state and allowed his grief to take over. Then the boy stopped, a dawning realization coming over his face as he brought a hand to his bandage-cover eyes. "My eyes, they're gone?" he said more as a statement than a question. Hiruzen could not help it anymore. "Naruto-kun," he said before he could stop himself. He saw Naruto flinch at the sound of his voice. Again, he looked around, trying to find him in a room he could not see. "Gigi? Is that you?" the young boy asked, his voice sounding timider than he ever heard before. "Yes, it's me, my boy," he said, trying to keep his emotions in check. The boy stopped his wondering and turned his head to face him as best he could. He tilted his head like someone would when gazing at a particular specimen. "Are you there?" he asked. Hiruzen closed his eyes and took a deep breath to brace himself for what was to come. "Yes, I am Naruto-kun. It is good to see you are well. Gigi." The boy cheered aloud, bringing a smile to Hiruzen's face. "I'm so glad that you're here." Where is here?" he asked, scratching his whiskered cheek. The bright smile that flashed across the boy's face was almost enough to wash the old man's pain and grief of the day away almost. "In our hospital room," Hiruzen answered. He saw the boy visibly stiffen at the answer, and Sarutobi's face took a dark expression. What kind of encounter did he have here to incite a reaction like that? "Don't worry, young Naruto. Hayashi assures me that you have been treated well by the doctors." He tried to calm the child. Questions would have to come later. Naruto relaxed at the old man's reassurance. Then a questioning look appeared on his facial features. "Hayashi?" he questions. "He is the man that brought you here," Hiruzen said with a smile, happy to know that some of his citizens were willing to look after the young Jinchuriki. Still holding his daughter, Hiruzen saw Hayashi step into his peripheral vision. "Hello, Uzumaki-san," Hayashi said. "I am Hyaga Hayashi." Naruto turned his head slightly to face the Hyaga. It seems the boy was quickly adapting to his blinded state. "You were the one that brought me here?" he asks, an edge of nervousness in his voice. "Indeed, I was," Hayashi responded. "Once I had dealt with a kidnapper, I brought you here to have your injuries treated. I even made sure personally that the doctors treated you well," he explained. "Really? You did that for me?" Naruto asked, the disbelief both clear and heartbreaking. Glancing at the Hyaga patriarch, Hiruzen saw a small but sad smile on the man's face. "Indeed, I did. It was the least that I could do after what you did for my daughter," he explained. "Your daughter?" Naruto asked, a bit confused. "Oh!" he exclaimed, his expression brightening up. "That really pretty girl that man was taking?" he commented offhand. Hiruzen had to bit back his chuckle at the boy's comment on the Hyaga heiress. That chuckle turned into a full laugh at the girl's voice made. Looking at her, he saw that her face was about as red as a tomato. Hayashi's smile had become more genuine. Yes, the pretty girl, he said with a bit of mirth in his voice. Why don't you introduce yourself, Hinata? What? Time. Hinata stuttered out. The poor thing looked about ready to faint. I'm Hinata. It's nice to meet you in Nanaru. Uzumaki-san, she managed to say. Naruto's smile grew wider. Hinata, you have a pretty name, he said. I'm glad you're okay. Hiruzen could almost see the steam coming off the girl as she tried to process the boy's comment. Better move this along before the poor girl's higher functions shut down, he must to himself. She is fine, Naruto. A bit frightened, but alright. Thanks to you, he said, congratulating the boy. Naruto faced the Hokage. I'm glad she's alright, he said. Leave it to Naruto to be more concerned with the well-being of others than his own. He truly is your son Minato and Kushina. You would be so proud of him right now. Sarutobi thought to himself. Though I am sorry to say that you have paid a high price for saving her, he said sadly. Naruto gave him a questioning look before he realized what the old man was referring to. He brought his hand back to his bandaged head. That's right, my eyes, he said softly. I'm sorry to say that the doctors will not be able to restore your eyes, Hiruzen said. Nor will they be able to implant new ones. Naruto still maintained a small but sad smile. It's okay, Gigi. I already knew. But I think it's worth it. So as long as Hinata is safe. It still wasn't comfort for Hiruzen's tired soul. Not to worry, Naruto. I have an old student whom I broken bar wait. He said. His mind went back to a part of Naruto's statement. You said you already knew. How? He asks. The blonde-haired boy scratched the back of his head, laughing nervously. You caught that, huh? He said. Hiruzen had the sudden urge to get a bottle of aspirin. Let's just say while I was out, I had an encounter of the broken bar foxy kind. Hiruzen felt his eyes narrow at the not-so-subtle clue. Next to him, he saw Hayashi put Hinata down. Hinata, could you please step outside for a bit? The Hokage and I need to talk to Uzumaki-san in private, he told the girl, who hesitantly glanced at her father, then at Naruto. Finally her eyes settled on Sarutobi. The old man nodded his head at the girl, thankful he would not have to explain some awkward subjects. Go on ahead, young Hinata. We'll call you back in when we're finished, he said. The girl nodded at him and looked back at her father. Okay, Atozen, she said quietly. Then she turned to face Naruto and bowed. Goodbye Uzumaki-san. She walked across the room and, with an opening and shutting of the door, was gone. As soon as the door was shut, Hiruzen walked to the wall opposite of Naruto and placed his hand on it. Channeling his chakra, he activated the hidden silencing seals. During the hospital's construction, he had ordered these seals placed in every room if he or other ranking officials in the Shinobi Corporation needed to hear in private the reports of returning wounded Shinobi. Turning around, he faced the young Jinchuriki. Explain, he ordered. For a moment, Naruto was silent as he gathered his thoughts. It began not long after I blacked out. Unknown Naruto woke up still feeling the stinging pain around his eyes. The first thing he noticed was that he was wet, very wet. He sat up and looked around, seeing that he was in some kind of sewer. He didn't recognize it as anything that Konoha had, or at least not what he had explored of it. Could it be an older section he hadn't explored yet? Just great, the time threw me down into the sewers, he thought, getting up and began to walk down the strange sewer tunnel. He turned his head around, trying to get a good look at the place and trying to figure out where he was. I have to get out of here and tell Gigi about the bad man. If he was fast enough, there might still be time to save that pretty girl he saw just before the bad man tore his eyes out. He stopped in his tracks at the last thought. Entirely too calm for the situation, he reached his hand up to where his eyes were and felt them. They were still there and intact. He could see. But that was impossible, right? That man had used that sharp knife thing to cut them out. He even still felt the lingering pain around them. So, shouldn't the only thing he sees be pitch black darkness like he would when he slept? Should he be feeling empty holes where his eyes are and the blood around them? This is strange, he thought, surprised at how calm he was about the oddness of his situation. What's happening here? He asked aloud, knowing that no one was around to hear him. Where am I? He wasn't as alone as he thought he was. I can answer your questions, young jailer. The voice was deep and resonated with power, yet at the same time, it held a certain calmness to it. No, calm wasn't the word for it, more like it had an underline of grief. Who was that? He asked the voice, looking around, seeing no one that it could have come from. Who are you? Where are you? He asked, feeling a small amount of panic building up. This whole scenario was getting weirder and weirder by the second. A mysterious disembodied voice in the middle of a sewer system that Naruto had no idea of? Yay, that sounded like a wonderful place to be at. Just follow the sound of my voice. The voice spoke again. Naruto took a hesitant step forward, then stopped. Was it a good idea to do as it said? He may not be the brightest candlestick, but even Naruto knows better than to do as a stranger said. Given that he couldn't even see the stranger in question, and this may all be in his head, Naruto was understandably suspicious about it. Do not be afraid, boy, I will not hurt you. You have my word. The voice tried to reassure him. Naruto thought about it for a second or two and concluded that he had nothing else to do given the circumstances. All right, I'm coming, he responded. But if you break your word, I'll whoop your ass, believe it. He shouted as loud as his lungs could allow him. Ha ha ha, then for my sake, I better keep my word, the voice said, sounding more amused than threatened. His cheeks lighting up in embarrassment at the thought that the stranger wasn't taking him seriously, Naruto began to walk down the tunnel following where the voice was coming from. I'll show him not to take me seriously, he thought to himself, unaware that his thoughts were not as private as he would like them to be. He wondered about the water-covered tunnel for what seemed like hours until up ahead, he saw something strange. At what he guessed to be the end of the sewer tunnel was a set of caged doors. They were huge. Bigger than the gates at the front of the village. The space between the bars was big enough for him to walk past with no trouble. He didn't know why, but something told him they weren't meant for someone like him. The question was who or what was it meant for? Getting closer to the gates, he saw that up in the center where the two doors would meet was a slip of paper that read seal. What is this thing? He wondered aloud, peering into the darkness behind the gates. He could see nothing but what appeared to be the thin outline of something. Something really big. So, the jailer finally decides to visit the prisoner. The voice spoke. Now that he was close enough, Naruto could tell it was coming from behind the barred cage. Jailer. Prisoner? What are you talking about? Who are you? Naruto asked as the confusion set in again. He heard the voice chuckle. Ah, I seem to have gotten ahead of myself. It spoke. Naruto saw the outline begin to move. Slowly the light began to reveal the figure behind the caged doors. Allow me to introduce myself. His eyes widened in both fear and surprise as he gazed at the figure before him. Its 9 tails swaying behind it, conveying a sense of amusement, and its orange fur glistening with power, unlike anything Naruto had seen. The fox-like creature held a toothy smile that would have even sent a chill down the devil's spine. Hello Uzumaki Naruto, I am the Kyuubi no Irinko. Spoke the demon fox that had attacked the village years ago. Processing. 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 Kyuubi. Kyuubi? For the first time in his life, Naruto had stuttered, his shaking finger pointing at the giant fox in question. The fox's smile widens, causing the young boy to take a step back. Boo! Naruto would never admit to screaming like a girl even unto his dying breath as he jumped and fell onto his back. The landing sending water everywhere and soaking him. Ha 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 ha! The fox reared its head back in a boisterous laugh. Oh, you're too easy kid ha ha ha! It said in between laughs. Naruto's cheeks flushed in embarrassment, his anger for the moment quelling his fear. He jumps to his feet and points an accusatory finger at the laughing fox. Oi! That wasn't funny, asshole! He screeches at the fox, who stops and looks at the sheathing child. Then he began to laugh some more. Ha ha, yes it is. Ha ha, why do you think I'm laughing for? Naruto swore a vein in him was bulging. The fox's loud laughter went on for several minutes before it got control of itself. You done? Naruto asked through gritted teeth. For the time being. Ha ha, I haven't had a good laugh like that in a long time. The Kyuubi spoke. It rests its head on its hand, gazing at Naruto with prideful eyes. For a moment, he thought he saw a hint of softness. Now, I do believe you have questions for me? It asked. Yeah, I do, Naruto shouted at the fox. Where are we? And how are you alive? Wasn't the Yondaime supposed to have killed you? This wasn't good. If the Kyuubi was still alive, the village would be in big trouble. I need to find a way out of here and tell Gigi that the fox is still around. Maybe he'll know what to do. Kit. You're standing right in front of me. I can hear you just fine. Keep your tone down. The fox said, the annoyance dripping from its voice. Naruto was about to shout again. He stopped himself, deciding that annoying the giant fox of doom and destruction wasn't going to be good for his health. Answer my questions. he said in a level tone. Better. Now, as for how I am still among the living, Kyuubi responded. That is simple. I cannot die. I am a being made of pure chakra, pure energy directed by a powerful mind. Even the most powerful of your kind could never hope to kill me, not truly. At best, you can disperse my body, but I would simply reform years later, and you would be back as square one. He said. Naruto decides it was a he, by his voice. So, you're not dead, then how did the Yondaime defeat you? If Naruto could find how his hero beat the fox, then maybe he could repeat it. What hoping you can defeat me? Like your hero, the Yondaime did 5 years ago, the fox sarcastically replied. Even if you did know, it will be years before you have the skill and knowledge to pull it off. Assuming you're even capable of it. But to answer your question, the Yondaime, instead of killing me, went with the next best thing. He sealed me away. Sealed you away? Naruto asked. Yes indeed. The art of thought in jutsu is a powerful ability that few can use and even less master. I suggest that once you're out of here that you look into it. Who knows, you might have a talent for it. Naruto had a strange feeling that the fox knew more than he let on. Why would you ask me that? He asked. It seemed odd that the fox would encourage him to study the same power that the Yondaime used to defeat him. Why? The Kyuubi parroted. I suppose that would be confusing to you, Kit. Well, to say that we're in the same boat would be the understatement of the century. Understatement of the century? Same boat? Naruto muttered, trying to figure out the fox's angle. Stop talking in riddles. Just tell me. The fox rose, standing on all fours. Tell me, Kit, what do you think the Yondaime used to seal me? He asked. Used to seal you? Yes, used to seal me. When it comes to sealing anything, be it a kunai or an article of clothing or, in this case, a living being, you need something else to contain it. A vessel of sorts, in this context my prison. The Kyuubi explained. Naruto got it now for a seal to work. It needed something else to work as a container. I don't know, a scroll, or maybe a teapot. Anything that could capture you. Naruto answered. For a moment, the fox looked like he had been insulted. By the way, he glared at the boy. The glare vanished and was replaced with a calm, almost amused expression. A good guess, Kit, and a correct one if I were one of the lesser Baju. Like Shukaku last I heard, he had been sealed into a kettle pot, never going to let him live that one down. Naruto gave the fox a deadpan look over his mutterings. Other Baju. Shukyaki? Naruto questioned. Shukaku. Whatever. So, wait, there are others like you? Naruto asked the Nine Tails. Yes, there are 9 of us, to be exact. Going from the one tail, Shukaku the weakest, to me the 9 tails and the strongest of the Baju. I will explain more later as I sense our time is short. What matters is that, unlike my brother, I cannot be simply sealed into an animated object. My power and will would be too much for it, and I would break free in an instant. Naruto tilted his head, puzzled by the fox's statement. If an object couldn't be used to imprison the Kyuubi, then what could he use a living thing, didn't he? He said as the thought occurred to him. Hearing his own question, he felt a cold chill down his back as certain pieces began to come together. Naruto would be the first to admit that he wasn't the sharpest kunai around, but he was smarter than what most gave him credit for, if any at all. The way the villagers treated him, whispering demon child or fox boy when they thought he wasn't listening. Why his birthdays were always his worst days. How Gigi always seemed to avoid his questions on why the villagers treated him badly. The fox smiled at him like a parent would to their child for achieving something noteworthy, something Naruto did not know how to feel about. Correct, boy. What's more, he could not use an animal since they would not have the will to keep me at bay. The vessel had to be a human, ideally a newborn baby, as their chakra networks would still be forming and could adapt to the strain of the ceiling. Naruto felt his knees start to shake. It was me, wasn't it? I was that baby, he said quietly, not sure if the fox could hear him or not. He did. Yes, you are my container. My prison. Naruto fell to his knees. I am a monster. It's like everyone said I'm a demon child. I killed all of those people 5 years ago. The child muttered out his voice, quivering as tears streamed from his eyes. It was no wonder that the whole village hated him. He was the Kyuubi in human form. Gigi must hate him too. The shell-shocked blonde did not get far in his self-loathing. The fox pounds a fist into the watery floor, sending a shock wave out that almost blew Naruto away. Recovering from the blast, the boy looks up at the seething fox, shock and fear battling it out for dominance. Uzumaki Naruto. If your Oki-san heard you right now, she would whoop your ass for such stupidity, he said in a low growl that caused the water to ripple. To say and believe that is an insult to you and me and degrades the sacrifice that your yondaime made to save your worthless village. Now tell me, kid, do I look like a scrawny snot-nosed brat to you? Naruto shook his head, not registering the insult thrown at him. Now, do you look like a giant fuck-murdering nine-tailed fox? Again, Naruto shook his head. Good boy, you do have a brain in that thick head of yours. Naruto frowned at the fox's insult. Hey, who are you calling brainless, you overgrown fuzzball? He hotly shouted at said fuzzball. That's the spirit, kit. I don't need you going emo on me like a certain group of people with an eye infection. Elsewhere, all the residents at the Uchiha compound sneezed, except for one. Is something going around? He asked back to Naruto and the fox. You are not me, and I am not you, Kyuubi said, starting to calmer than before. Got that good? Naruto nodded his head. Yay, I think I do. Good, glad to know my vessel isn't a complete moron. Watch it, fuzzball. HMPH, the fox snorted. Any other questions before we move on? Yeah, Naruto replied, looking around the sewer. If you're supposed to be inside of me, then what is this place, and why am I here? Last I checked, I didn't have a sewer inside of me. He asked. Simple, we're in your mindscape. The Kyuubi said. Mindscape? What's that? Simply put, we are in your mind. Here we can converse as we are doing now. There are other uses for it that I will tell you about them later. Okay. I'm not sure if I follow. But if this is my mind, then why does it look like a sewer? Naruto asked, taking another look around at the admittedly boring scenery. He was expecting the inside of his mind to look a bit more awesome than what he was seeing. And how did I get here? I have a few ideas, but that will have to wait. Though I can tell you that you can change it once you know how to. Wouldn't mind a change of scenery. As for how you got here, I was able to pull your consciousness here after you black out from the pain of your eyes being torn out by that Kumo-nin. Naruto shot back up to his feet. That girl! He shouts, realizing he had completely forgotten the events in the alley. I have to get out of here. She could still be in trouble. He frantically looks for any sign of an exit. Calm down, Kit. The girl is safe. Right after you lost consciousness, I sensed someone else deal with the kidnapper. Kyuubi said. Naruto let a breath of relief at hearing that the girl with the pretty eyes was safe. That's nice to hear. He said, plopping down into the water. So, you said that you brought me here? Why? I have two main reasons, replied the fox. First, I had wished to meet my jailer in person. If we are stuck together, we might as well get to know each other, so we don't end up wanting to tear out each other's throats out. Naruto nodded his head to show he understood the fox's reasoning before shifting his position into a sitting one with his legs crossed. Now that he thought about it, he was surprised that the Kyuubi, the monster that attacked his village, a being that killed hundreds if not thousands of innocent lives. A creature that supposedly could level mountains with a single swipe of one of its 9 tails was acting so cordial. Hearing the stories of the fox from the village had built up an image of a snarling beast that craved only carnage and destruction, an embodiment of death. What he saw here was nothing of such. If anything, he seemed calmer than Gigi. For a moment, he wonders if what he knew of the attack 5 years ago was the full story. My second reason is to discuss what we are going to do about your newly acquired blinded stat. For a moment, the blonde was puzzled by the Kyuubi's statement. Then his mind went back to his most recent memories. My eyes. He mutters, his hand instinctively reaching for his eyes. How could he have forgotten that? Without them, it's going to be hard becoming a shinobi. Right? He saw the Kyuubi nod his head. Correct, Kit. In normal circumstances, it would be hard enough to join the ranks of the shinobi. He began to explain. Difficult but not impossible. However, given your status as my container, certain people may use this to stop you. The villagers, Naruto said, his head downcast, realizing his dreams may be impossible now. Do not fret, Kit. I may have a solution to your problem if you're willing to hear me out. Naruto looked up at the fox, eager to hear what he had in mind. How? He asked. Tell me, Kit, what do you know about Kekkai Genkais? Back to the present, you mean to us that the Kyuubi no Yoko gave you a Kekkai Genkai? Hayashi said, almost shouting. His head was whirling with the revelation that Naruto had contacted the monster that nearly destroyed the village 5 years ago. That it wasn't the monster, he believed it to be. Sure, the thought that it was trying to deceive him had crossed his mind. But the Sandame seems to think that the fox was acting truthfully, as he did not bring up any concerns, only asking for the occasional clarification throughout Naruto's story. He even chuckled at the bit where the fox mentioned Naruto's mother. It seemed that the elderly Hokage knew more about the Biju than he let on. Yay! The young Jinchuriki said, rubbing the back of his head. He gave me a kinji? Kinji? Kek. That thing you just said. A Kekkai Genkai. Otherwise known as a bloodline limit, a power that can manifest in certain individuals and their families. The Hokage explained. A powerful tool for some. It would explain why we felt the fox's chakra earlier. He did say that it might cause others to panic. Naruto said with a nervous smile. So, he sent me out to calm you guys down. How appreciative of him. Tell him he has my thanks. Sandaime said. I'll be sure to do that the next time I see him. He said that he has a lot to tell. The boy replied. He would not mind if I was in attendance for that. Hayashi looked at the old Hokage like he had gone senile. He was saying that like the two were old friends waiting to catch up with each other. I know a Yamanaka who can help with that. Actually, he does want to see you. The blonde-haired child said. He said something about wanting to have words with you about my living conditions and that a certain redhead was probably waiting for you in the afterlife. Whatever that means. For the first in a long time, Hayashi saw the Sandaime Hokage, the Shinobi no Kami visibly shiver. He could not fault him. An angry Kushina was one thing that scared him more than the Kyuubi, and one that parental fury on her side would make Maki look like paradise. I look forward to it. He heard the man say. Hayashi turned his head to face the child sitting in the bed. So, tell us, Uzumaki-san, what power did the fox give you? He asked, changing the subject. A fox-like ran across Naruto's lips, and for a second, he could swear he saw a small hint of maliciousness in it. Instead of telling about, I show you? 1 hour later, interrogation room in TI Center he had failed. It was the only way to describe his current situation. Even if his comrades were to come to his rescue, it would only be so that Raikage would execute him for his failure. His captors brought him into a room and forced him onto a wall where they chained his hands. He was facing the far end of the room. He did not doubt that the wall was a one-way window and had present he was being watched. What more could they want? They already have everything I know. Another mark of his shame, when the interrogators came he was prepared for whatever inhumane methods they had to force his lips. Even the Konoha, known for its peace-loving ways, knew when to get its hands dirty. Looking to the past 3 great Shinobi wars was evidence enough of that. He was ready to die screaming, taking his secrets to his grave, the hope he had to carry some form of respect in his village. He broke in less than 10 minutes, and the scarred man that was his interrogator never even touched him. His shame was complete, and now he only had one of 2 possibilities to look forward to. Either he would be handed over to the Hyugas and be killed for his transgressions against their clan. Or he would be released back to his village, where he would be executed for his failure. 2 different paths ending in the same destination, his body becoming fertilizer for the ground. For a moment, he had contemplated the possibility of ending his life before they had a chance to decide his fate. He quickly discarded that thought because there was no way he could succeed due to being constantly watched, and 2, it would be viewed as a final disgrace. He would take his death with whatever small amount of dignity he could. All of this was the result of one thing. Had he not indulged in his wounded pride, he would be well on his way out of Konoha and back to Kumo. He should have slit that brat's throat when he had the chance. He heard the door creak and a pair of figures walking in. He rose his head up to see who they were. He found himself taking an intake of air. One of them was a purple-haired kunoichi with a sadistic smile plastered on her face. The other caused his blood to boil with rage. "All right, brat, do your thing," the kunoichi said, sounding bored. "Don't know what the old geezer is thinking letting you in here." The boy that had ruined his life stepped towards him. He was now dressed in some simple clothes, and there were fresh bandages wrapped around his head. Nonetheless, he still recognized the boy that he mutilated. Every fiber in his being wanted to lunge at the child and tear his head off. To hear his screams for mercy as he died. The former nin controlled himself, realizing what he was seeing was an elaborate genjutsu meant to torment him. He had to admit it was a nicely thought out one, forcing him to see his victim haunt his guilty conscience or get a rise out of him. Too bad for them, he saw right through their trick. "You took my eyes from me," the boy thing said, his voice sounding eerily calm for a child that had been tortured only a few hours ago. "Yay, so what of it?" the Kumonin said, deciding to humor the leaf bastards. "What are you going to do about it?" he said, mocking the image in front of him. "Get even with me by taking my eyes?" What the illusionary boy did next caused him to shiver in fright. He smiled. "There's an idea," he said, raising his hand to the man's face. He gave the child a questioning look. What were these leaf nin playing at? "What are you?" His voice trailed off as he felt a strange sensation behind his eyes. And not pressure one usually felt when they sneezed, only this time it was continuous and building up. "What are you?" he said before pressure turned to an aching then into pain. He felt like his eyes were being forced out of his skull, but he couldn't see what was causing it. The boy was only holding his hand out, and the kunoichi behind him wasn't doing anything. If anything, she seemed surprised by whatever was happening. The pain continued to build. It was like someone had lit a fire behind his eyeballs. He found it hard to breathe, feeling his whole body go numb. Then all at once, he felt an explosion of pain around his head. He screamed as he saw darkness. Hiruzen's mouth was still gaping when Naruto entered the observation room, a giddy Anko right behind him. He had seen what had happened and still found it hard to believe. At first, he had his reservations about letting Naruto in the same room as his tormentor. Kami knew what kind of reaction that would cause in the boy. But the young blonde was adamant about wanting the man to be, in his words, my first victim. A phrasing that worried him then and still did now. How Mitarashi was looking at the boy, wasn't helping either. He looked out the one-way window seeing that the medics were still struggling to sedate the screaming man, blood dripping from his empty eye sockets. He looked back to Naruto, his gaze settling on the pair of green eyes floating in front of him, hovering just in front of where his eyes used to be. A strange sight for sure. The boy gazed up at the old gauge, the eyes moving with his head to look at him. As impossible as it was, he knew that Naruto was somehow seeing him through those eyes. "Naruto," he said to the boy, his mind already thinking of how he would spin this to the council. "Is this the power that the Kyuubi gave you?" he asked. He saw the boy nod his head. The eyes remained unmoving. "Yes, it is," he confirmed. I still don't know what to call it. But what it does, as the fuzzball said, is it lets me take the eyes of others and see through them. He explained, holding his hand where the eyes floated to. Interesting. He said a few possible ways of what it could be used for already popping into his head. They would have to find out what all he could do with this ability. Can you control several of them, and how many? Are there any other powers your gift has? He asked, wanting to understand the new tool Naruto and Konoha had at their disposal. According to the fox, yes. He's not sure how many, but he estimates hundreds or even thousands. Naruto replied as his eyes floated towards Hiruzen and circled around him before returning to the child. Any other abilities, he says, I'll have to discover for myself. Hiruzen stroked his chin, thinking over the details Naruto gave him about his new power. Judging by what he could see right now, the eyes just floated in the air, somehow transmitting what they see directly to the user's brain. He speculated that thin chakra strings were somehow involved. Farther, he could see that Naruto could freely move the eyes around as he was doing now. Depending on how far they could go away from him, they would be invaluable in a reconnaissance role. Imagine being able to scout out an enemy encampment or the home of a target. After all, no one had a reason to look for floating eyeballs. Even then, they could be hidden in any number of places. Then there was the question of if he could see through several eyes at once? If so, how many at a time? Could he train to see through more? Could he use the Byakugan or the Sharingan if he somehow came into possession of them? How would he acquire more eyes? Many questions formed into the old Shinobi's mind, just as they would whenever he came across a new Kekkai Genkai like this one. A power like this one had many possibilities, and he was certain that Naruto was eager to explore them all. But for now, Hiruzen turned his attention back to Naruto chatting with Anko and Daibeki. Despite the boy's energy, it was clear that the boy was tired. "Come, Naruto-kun," he said, taking a grandfatherly tone with the blonde-haired child. "I think it is time that you got some rest. We can learn more about your powers tomorrow." He held his hand to the boy, who took it. The pair walked out of the room, a couple of Anbu guards closely shadowing them. "Where are we going, Gigi?" Naruto asked, his head turned towards him. Hiruzen smiled at a memory just before they left the hospital. "Hayashi-san has offered to stay at his home for the night as thanks for what you did," he said. He suspected that the clan head had more that he wanted to talk about in private. He even had an idea of what it might be. "Really?" the child said with awe. "He sounds like a nice guy." After tonight's events, he was inclined to give Hayashi what he wanted. That he is. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe.